Consideration of the Public Art Committee and Public Works Committee recommendation to provide direction on either proceeding with or terminating the Point Emery Public Art Project.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thank you for coming and staying. Appreciate it.
So it's more than one button.
Getting into the PowerPoint.
Yep.
I just need it to be on the computer. So I pressed that once.
Fire services.
Press it down further. My apologies. I'm Amber Evans with Economic Development.
Their turnout
And
time.
I am bringing, as you said, the Point Emery consideration of moving forward. Yep, thank you.
But I have it on.
Moving forward with Point Emery's art installation or terminating the project.
Yeah, like are they training them?
This RFP for the art installation was done in March of 2012. A selection panel was convened in May of that year, getting us to 4 finalists from a large pool of initial applicants. In November of last year, we had technical review of the finalists, and in January, there were selection panel review, and a recommendation was unanimously made to install a piece by Adam Cubby called Shells and Mounds. And then in March and April, this recommendation from the selection panel went to committee recommendations. And here we found we were looking at some issues. Specifically, during the selection panel interviews, Philip Smith specifically raised concerns about the rate and the extent of erosion. And the other artists also called attention to this. But Philip brought a picture that I'm about to show you. And the panel made a suggestion about the selection panel specifically recommended looking at riprap installation along with the artwork installation. Particularly, an artist noted that this image here, there's undercutting of the actual trail and the question of if there are existing safety issues on the trail at Point Emery today. And so Public Works started to look at a staff level, what additional riprap would need to be added and what the cost estimates for that might be. And looking at the total blue area here, the estimates were about $300,000, including about $50,000 for permitting. And there was some uncertainty about the time and duration and delay associated with BCDC permitting for riprap and whether that would even be feasible. But within that context, we had an artist that had been recommended that had actually suggested in their proposal to have interactive erosion as part of the statement of it. And that his pieces got smaller as they moved to it. They had less reinforcement, so that they would be more likely to decay at the end of the point closest to the erosion. So with that, Adam Cubby specifically was looking to reproduce and evoke Native American shell mounds as found here in Emeryville and along the entire East Bay. He was looking to use local materials out of Drakes Bay's oyster farm to create these pieces along with concrete. His intention was to create spaces that not only worked visually but were able to be sat upon, climbed upon, and walked on. And that there would be 2 sides to each of these, that you could be on one side looking east, you could be on the other side looking west, so forth. And that, as I said, he was looking at using this oystercrete, or a combination of local oyster shells with concrete mixed in them as a top layer, then over rock fill and some reinforcement rebar within it. And so the selection panel had some questions about the materials that would be used, but we'll talk about that in a bit. I just included this slide to say that I do have samples of that materials that were proposed. There are 2, both at the top you see a rougher texture, and that's where people are not sitting. There isn't a pathway through it, and the smoother is where there's an intention of people sitting or using as a path over the trails. One of the things the selection panel was particularly impressed about this artist was his collaborations with tradespeople and his final products. And so there had been some concerns about the imagery used to convey his proposal, but there was confidence in his final execution. His initial proposal had 7 different mounds. The reaction of the selection panel as well as Public Works was that specifically the mound on the beach would need to be removed because there's active recreation, wind sails that come down and could be entangled. So there was definite removal of that piece. I'll show you something in a minute regarding that. And then perhaps just reducing some of the numbers of it. So this initial proposal that had the 7 items cost about $145,000. Some money in addition to this has already been spent on the selection process and the conceptual proposals from all 4 finalists. This includes a line specifically for a mock-up or a 3/4 scale version of one of these to be put on site to determine some of the questions we'll be looking at. And specifically, those questions include the color. There was a strong reaction to the stark whiteness and a desire by the selection panel to look at something more organic or decomposed granite, or to go back to sort of the shell's natural color. To look at the dimensions, particularly given the erosion, and then the total number and where they would be installed, and remove that one on the beach. I'm also looking at the surface, making sure there were no tripping hazards, that the aesthetics for the project were met, and that there were easy transitions from the seats, the path, the mound, and then just looking at that reinforcement and making sure that given the severe conditions of both salt, wind, earthquake, liquefaction, that these are well reinforced for the conditions. And with that was kind of this question of would there be additional mounds removed, and would it be a smaller footprint to account for the future erosion within the site. Specifically, the Public Arts Committee considered, when they got the selection panel's recommendation, asked that the Public Works Committee look at this project and look at the proposal for the riprap to see if there could be an installation of the riprap prior to installation of the art, and then to move forward with that larger project. The Public Works Committee considered that in March and recommended proceeding with no riprap. So the recommendation was to go ahead with the art installation, but allow erosion to proceed and have that almost be an interactive aspect of the installation. The Public Art Committee was reported back to with this recommendation and did not recommend going forward without riprap. And so we're here tonight bringing you both of those committees' action and looking for guidance for us as staff as to whether or not we should terminate the project, notify the artists that we will not be moving forward, or if we should proceed specifically in terms of contracting for that mock-up, that 3,200 initial 3/4 scale project to be put on the site and looked at for more specifics, with the intention that if feasibility issues work out, that we would move forward with the project, and that our next step would be to come back to you with a contract for the full installation and transportation and fabrication. And so that's the purpose, and with that I can just answer any questions I hope that you might have, or Public Works may also.
Jennifer?
I don't have any specific questions. I just have opinions.
Okay. What's your
I'll
opinion?
share those.
Happy to hear.
I feel like it was very clear direction from the council when we talked about this public art that it was not about reinforcing the point, and it was in fact a way to celebrate, you know, this change and the erosion. So I'm not in favor of any money spent on riprap and enforcing the point. I do agree that there should be no mound near where the erosion is happening, and if we can reduce the number of mounds, I think that would be great. I otherwise think it's a really cool art project to enjoy, and I want to be sure that people can sit not only facing north and south as in the pictures, but also it looks like east and west. So.
I think.
And finally, with the I do have a question. Will the mock-up, it's a temporary trial if it works out, would it just stay there, or would it be deconstructed?
The proposal was to do a temporary trial. I think that if there was a decision based on the trial to not go forward, it would be decommissioned. Mm-hmm. That would be the theory of it anyway. If the decision was to go forward, we might have placed that in such a way that it was part of the final design. Or, you know, we learned, no, we need a different mix, so we are decommissioning it, but we're redoing it in that site.
Okay.
Jack?
So, wait a minute. Jennifer, does that mean you want to move ahead?
I would like to move ahead with it, yeah.
I guess I have a different take on this. I don't remember with the prior city manager whether this was a private discussion or a public discussion, but we thought we would let sea level rise take its course. And in terms of trying to kind of strengthen Point Emery, the only parts that we would try to protect would be up to the end of the pavement. So to even put 3 or 4 mounds past the pavement when they're going to have a short lifespan, it doesn't seem like a great use of public money to me. And then when you take out the beach mound, then there's not much of an art installation left. But I'm not really sure. I personally, and I might be outvoted here, but I don't think we should put mounds past the pavement, because I think it should just be natural and let the bay reclaim it.
Can I just ask that, didn't all of the different art considerations go past the pavement? This wasn't the only one, I think, that went out.
All 4 finalist proposals were all to the west of the parking. Okay. This is the only proposal that actually had elements that were to the east, had any components to the east.
Do we have any idea about the rate of erosion? How long it would take?
We have a series of pictures over about a 30-year period that it's that our guesstimates, being that we're not all professional erosion rate calculators, was that we could probably anticipate, if we cited this to the maximal distance from either side of the erosion for 20 years, and that we could even consider signage that said, because one of the questions that came up was, well, what about sea rise, and what if that dramatically changes and they disappear much quicker than that, or the rate of erosion? And one of the thoughts was that you could have signage that says our intent with this art project is for the last 20 years, and if it's not here, or it's declined at a faster rate, you may be seeing a change in your natural environment. And the artist for this proposal specifically had templates about wanting to do some interactive signage at the site, and certainly spoke to his installation being about the impact of erosion being visualized.
Thanks.
Maurice, you going to say something?
Yeah, a couple comments. If you notice on that photograph, we have done some riprap out there, so it extends out to about beyond the second art mound that's shown there. So you've got the parking lot roundabout, and then you've got 2 shell mound art pieces to the west of it. And you can see on the photograph where we have riprap. That area up to that point won't erode very fast. So you could do art installations beyond the parking lot and still have it protected, at least for a portion that's protected right now. We built that park in about 1989, 1990, and there used to be a bench out at the end. That's now in the water. The footing for that is out there. It's eroded probably 10 to 15 feet in width on the northern side. And that's the area that's getting the fastest amount of erosion. So, so if you were to put a mound to the south of the path, pretty soon you're not going to have room to have a path, because that path is right up against the edge of the erosion right now. So eventually we're going to have to relocate that path. if you were to do some minimal riprap, it would have to be on the north side. I would say to do it on the north side, but you still need to go through the permitting process. But I hear from council they're not interested in it. So eventually you're going to have the area west of the riprap erode into the bay, and you'll probably want to protect at least what you have left at some point in the future.
Well, I guess my concern is the safety issue. So what are we going to do as far as making it safe for people to even be out there?
That'll
Because
become an
it's-
issue, right?
Yeah, because if I understand this correctly, the riprap would fill in those areas that now aren't safe. So,
Correct. So if you there was a photograph that you had in your slide
back to that
presentation
one.
that showed the erosion right up to the path. So eventually, that's
and-
going to continue in. You've got a drop off right next to the pedestrian path. So that is going to become an issue.
yeah, no, that's my concern, and what I'm hearing is undermining under the path. So you never know when the path is going to be safe to
Well,
walk
you could
on.
see the edge right now. You could tell if it's undermined.
Yeah, but you don't see it when you're walking down the path.
At nighttime. Yeah.
So my concern is what are we going to do about that?
Well, we had discussed a bit to try to realign the path, to try to move it away from the edge.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we could do for the interim, to try to add any kind of protection out there, or the riprap is going to be, eventually in the bay anyway.
yeah.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is, whatever we do out there, we should look at maybe redesigning it, move the path over, and then putting some sort of fencing or some sort of, ability for people.
Barrier
not-
there, potentially.
Barrier so
Right.
people don't fall into that.
Right.
So you're inclined to move forward?
I'm inclined to move forward with some safety issues.
The other thing is, eventually that art will be in the bay. You can see the large pieces of concrete to the bay side. That used to be where the shoreline was when we built the
Yeah.
park. So you can see how much has come
It
in.
looks like we're fighting a losing battle, but we need to
Correct,
keep it
correct.
safe. So that's,
Well, I'd like to just give an opinion. Oh, Sharon, did you want to say something?
I'd like to. Sharon Wilshire, Chair of the Public Art Advisory Committee. So the discussion you're having here is the same discussion that we had, obviously, at the Public Art Committee. And what we had done prior to this split vote was to, before we made a recommendation on this, was to find out what Public Works, intent was for this. And I don't know that it had been clear to us from the beginning that the comments about that this was never going to be remediated. It was always meant to just go into the bay. But anyway, and one of the things that we had thought about when we initially considered this site, maybe in, I don't know, 2011, I guess, was the America's Cup, and thinking that maybe we'd
That's
like
right.
to have a presence on the bay. So yes, we were split, 3 votes. We're not sure this is where we want to spend public art money if we know that it's going to be something that's going to just eventually disintegrate. The whole site will disintegrate. And some who felt, well, we don't know what that curve is for the timeline. So, okay, what if it's 10 years or what if it's 20? And then we had one abstention. So, but I
Unusual for your committee.
yeah, but I do want to just reinforce that tonight, one of the things, if you decide to continue with the project, is that it's just, right now we're thinking about that first phase of asking the artist to please do some sort of a mock-up that's, larger than a small scale, because there were concerns about the color, about the surface, about the infrastructure within the piece itself, the pieces rather. So those things need to be satisfied as well, because truly the selection panel really was taken with this artist's use of materials in other projects, but for some reason perhaps what he used as his model here just didn't quite fill that bill. And so we're hoping that with some of our concerns that he'll come back with something that meets those.
but I think we have pretty much consensus to do the first phase.
No, you don't.
We don't?
No, I
I'm
don't think it's
sorry.
good use of public money, and I'm going to go on record
Okay.
with that.
Could I make
Laura
a
wants to speak.
Well,
comment?
no,
Yeah.
Jack was, or,
Oh,
Jen-
Jennifer, go
Jennifer.
ahead.
Oh,
Go
Laura
ahead.
hasn't spoken yet. Please.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
okay, come on, Laura.
Listen, first I want to thank Amber and the Public Art Committee, because you all have picked out an absolutely astounding piece of art here. And I understand the concerns about the use of public money for something that will probably be overwhelmed by the ocean. But in the 15, 20, or 25 or 35 years when this art is here, this is going to be an absolute focal point. The art committee did a fabulous job on this. I think, Kurt, I appreciate your safety concerns. I think they can be worked out.
Great.
And I'm particularly taken with the idea of the artist when he's talking about interactive erosion. It's almost like a example of rising tides. I think it's just a perfect project. I support moving forward on it, and I look at it not as a dissipation of public money, but a really wise use of public money, because it serves a lot of other things besides being an artwork. It draws attention to the fact that these things are sinking into the water. It's just a fantastic project. So I would move that we would move ahead with this, keep our eye on the safety considerations, no riprap. You know, we don't want to get involved with BCDC if we don't have to.
So I agree with Nora, and I think it's really unfortunate the Public Art Committee didn't have that essential piece that I think came from the council, which was this is a transient, a temporary piece as we watch nature reclaim this
It's like the
land.
Marin running fence, only over a more extended period of time. It's dynamite.
Yeah.
You guys did a good
And
job.
it's a wild place, too. I know we need to have public safety, but there is common sense as well. And people, if they see a path eroded, I think they'll walk around it.
Yeah, but it's undercutting. That's the problem.
So maybe the path could be moved, but people make the path with their movement as well. So I think I just hope that the Public Art Committee will move forward and accept that. I do want to say that decomposed granite versus the white oyster shell, I think would be a mistake. Maybe the color needs adjusting, but unless I think DG can be really messy, actually. So I'm concerned about that. Thank you.
Do you have anything, Jack?
I support it.
Okay.
So we got a motion?
We got a motion.
Second?
Second. Okay.
No.
Nope. Got 4-1. Good.
Thank you.
That is going to be